right now is I don't want you to sit back. I want you to lean forward. I want you to listen to the wonderful words of these powerful poets because the street light is on.
What happens when image outweighs authenticity? When liars augment history to misshape the future? When we allow algorithms to tell us that actuality and truth need a booster? But how can we live in a world without truth when we live in a world filled with roosters? It's like we question everything. Like, am I really me? And are you really you? Maybe I'm a fire hydrant and maybe you're a giraffe. Maybe humanity is a gaff and maybe fire hydrants can write poetry and maybe giraffes can read it. But what happens when lies become high-minded and conceited? Alleging that truth is toxic, bigoted, obnoxious, hateful, and noxious. Should we look to lies to save us? I mean, should we replace the truth with lies? And if lies become truth, wouldn't that make them toxic too? Again, am I really me? And are you really you? Maybe the truth is I'm really you and you're really me simply because I wanted to be or simply because that's the way I feel. So do feelings determine what's true and what's real? Do feelings determine what's true and what's real? You see, feelings change, so maybe truth does too. And if that's the case, then is the law of gravity true? And is the sky really blue? Or can I change these things simply because I want to or simply because that's the way I feel? What if you were playing a game of poker and you had a winning hand, say a royal flush of spades, but your opponent all of a sudden alleges that the numbers on your cards no longer hold the same value and those spades are no longer spades? But they throw out a random hand and claim that they've won based on the impromptu rules they just made. Who's the true winner? You see, we think we can pick and choose what's true like we can pick and choose what's for dinner. We treat truth like it's archaic, obsolete, naive, or for beginners. I guess lies are more fitting for the more advanced of us. But could that be why the more advanced are more advanced at crafting their cons and deceit? Somehow, we've been led to believe that a strong lie makes the truth look weak. So on the strength of a lie, we build our beliefs until our house of winning cards falls to the ground underneath. You see, our lies can be modern, convenient, or chic, big, little, pretty, or sweet. But the bitter, ugly truth is they can never be true. Thank you.
When I was in the 8th grade, my family moved across the state. And at the school where I was coming from, I was known. I never needed to walk far before I found a face that felt familiar. That is to say, I had friends, real friends, people who I felt like cared about me. And as luck would have it, our friendship was birthed from the first letter of our last names, Wallace, Williams, Wood. We were a trio. But at this new school, I was Nemo, a new fish in an old tank, and my little fin was my ignorance to this new place. I didn't have the shared memory of middle school with the rest of my classmates. And I asked myself, would I make friends like I had back home? It was 8th grade, so it wasn't really that hard, but I asked myself the same questions I ask today. What's the recipe for good friendships? Do I preheat the oven at 360 degrees of approachability? Does it call for 2 cups of pretending to like what everybody else does? Do I add in 3 tablespoons of speedy responses when they text me and a dash of memes that I found kind of funny on the internet? If I mix all this together and bake it for 45 minutes, will I get the cake called friendship where people invite me to hang out? Will this little piece of something sweet bring the satisfaction of having somebody to call when my life gets rough? Will this friendship cake sour if I leave it out on the counter for too long? Maybe the best metaphor for friendship is like nurturing a plant. You put seeds in the dirt and you water it with attention. Maybe the best thing to do is to place it front row and center on the window seal of your soul. That way you got a direct line of sight to the sprouts that spring up, and if you start to notice the browning of conflict on their leaves, you just throw it away because we were never meant to be friends anyway, right? Nah, that can't be right. My only relationship to my friends can't only be about how I watch them grow, so I feel like I've lived too long to have never gotten this right when it occurs to me that maybe the answer is found in them hymns that used to lull me asleep in the 11 o'clock service. What a friend we have in Jesus, all my sins and griefs to bear. It dawns on me that the kind of friend that I've been looking for has had me on his mind before the foundations of the world were even laid. That sounds like a real nice Christian thing to say, but I gotta be honest, sometimes I need a friend with flesh. I need a friend that can hold my thoughts and send them back to me, a partner that has my back and can hold me back, one that reminds me it's okay to not be okay. Wait. Even though it's Jesus' flesh that sits beside his Father in heaven, it's his body of believers that show up for me when I need them to. The Son of God not only holds my thoughts, but he knows them before I even think them. It's his Spirit that reminds me what not to say when my flesh is weak. He sets me on my feet so I don't repeat the same mistakes that left me in defeat. No sheets, shams, or pillows. He's my comforter when my soul gets weary. He's the one that's with me in the wheel, in the middle of the wheel, or whatever that means. The perfect picture of friendship is not a plant or a recipe, it's a person. Until I find peace in his presence, the best of friends will never be sufficient. So I will work on being a better friend to those around me. Salah.
Taller than them, so let me adjust. Somebody, when he said a friend to hold me back, you felt that, and I'm praying for you. Y'all need to stop. Y'all need to stop all that fighting. My name is Jonathan. I forgot I need to intro myself. I sing a lot. I like music, but I also like poetry. Random fun fact, as my friend would say, Black history fact about me. I didn't know how to do anything musical. I'm a worship leader now. I didn't know how to do anything musical till I was a sophomore in college. So before that, all I did was try to spit poetry. Poorly sometimes, but other times it sounded okay. So this one right here, it's meant to be a little, yeah, you'll see when you hear it. But I think y'all will catch it by the end. Her essence was solar system, a universe unexplored but seemingly conquered by travelers who sought to use gravity against her. They orbited around her beauty, working double time to convince them and her that she was merely an object. And what's terrible is, I really thought that you knew better. I thought that there was enough oxygen out there for your brain to function properly, but instead you left me to wonder if you saw her eyes as Neptune. Dark, cold, and windy without the anchor of your orthodoxy, though to me sometimes your orthopraxy seemed as worldly as earth. Did you see her as a queen, as somebody to love? Did you see the Mercury in her? Or did you put her in a box where only the beast sat? Earn her way into your good graces is what she had to do, while you claim that you worship he who created the sun. Hey, are you in reverse? I know she didn't come here on a spaceship, but you were well-read, planet or not. How do you explain Venus? How do you condemn the machine that brought her here but still use its parts? How do you let they and them make excuses for you, knowing that their maybes may be wrong? Like, maybe you bought her so the others wouldn't. Maybe you fed her good and kept her out of them fields. Maybe your wife did her hair and made all of her appeals. Maybe you loved her deeply and y'all were caught in relational bliss. Or maybe she was your property to do with her what you wish. I'm not convinced. How do profundities about God live on the backside of the receipt? Neat and freehand, grandiose portraits of heaven come down and its implications on the backside of heaven ignored, causing confusion for today and defenses by the saints. Because if heaven has hooray and forgiveness is your state, do we look at all of the page of the visions that you prayed? Is it senseless to plead your case if there's Venus's life at stake? Was she sister or was she slave? Was she goods or imago Dei? Because you ain't left much for us to say or even for us to speculate. Because your pen screams out your save, but this action yells constant hate. Because her blackness was on display, not as magic, but as a slave, not as beauty, but as a slave, not as human, but as a slave, not as good, but as a slave. Now I see why God relays his disgust with how we take other people and then degrade them down to worthless remains. Because the radius of the earth from your pen could not maintain enough distance for this division that you allowed to reign. But it's senseless to make the fiction that God is inhumane, because the furthest point on earth from one side of that page was the other side of that page. And Mr. Edwards, while you were out here glorying in the fact that you were bought for a price, you wrote sermons on the flip side of a receipt of an enslaved girl that you bought for a price. And the flagrance of this one, it shocks me still, because some people tell me to move past it or get over it because we all sin, and that's real. They tell me he was a man of his time so that I might just chill, but I'm still a little confused because it takes some skill for you to preach it good and teach it good and never change your route. Out in the forest praying while Venus slaving as she clean your house. All of the stuff that they did to Negroes back then that they did not care for. I just wonder if she had a face that you abhorred, and what does that mean for a young black Christian brother like me? Hair nappy, soul happy, spirit liberated and free, because it just seems that everybody has an excuse for both sides of that receipt. Yes, everybody seems to have an excuse for both sides of that receipt. Jonathan Edwards, I have to admit that I still don't know what to do with you. When I learned that you had slaves back then because it was just usual. You bought an enslaved girl named Venus and wrote sermons on the back of her receipt. And I hate that I want to love you, but because of the blood of Jesus, maybe we'll talk about it if we meet.
Habakkuk 2:14 says, "The earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea." Lord, I want to be the way in your waves. Let my anchor be the Ancient of Days. When God's people have to cross another Red Sea, let my obedience split waves because my faith is steady. I want to be so deep in your waters that waves rest on my head like black boys' haircuts. Let my mind be surrounded the way waves of loose curls flow from the head of somebody's daughter. But Lord, I can't swim though, so that means I got to focus on you so I can walk on your water. The same way waves follow the tides of the moon's gravity, I'm glad to be following after you because my waves too often display the pictures of my depravity. If your presence is the ocean, why do I keep running back to the beach as if sin has something better for me to reach? Is coming back to the beach a mark of my unbelief? Because sandcastles are really just metaphors for building fading kingdoms where I am the chief. Since your way is water, I stop getting upset when it starts to rain on my parade. Since your way is water, I stop thinking that storms were downgrades. Since water poured out from the wellspring of life, his love displayed that my debt been paid. I want to be the way in your waves. Let my anchor be the ancient of days. Let your glory come like clouds and your spirit fall like rain. Because human hands only maintain what your spirit sustains. I need a word that remains when sin's draw and attains. When the devil want to meet me in the desert, he want to trap me in his chains. Want to make me doubt God's name, make me wonder if my faithfulness is in vain, want to pressure me with pain. But since his way is water, I ask the devil bluntly, can you stand the rain? The day will come to be when his glory fills the earth as the waters cover the sea. But until then, I'm going to swim in the reservoir of his love and the rivers of his righteousness. I'll be the way in his waves. And my anchor will be the ancient of days. Salah.
I stand on street corners with one eye and one leg, watching base heads beg and bullet wounds cry tears the color of plasma. And I've seen death take men's breath like asthma. As the moon undresses the night, I've seen the light in men's eyes turn dark. Seen their gray matter exposed after the spark. Seen their blood and tears mix, their bodies turn stiff, their eyes focused and fixed as if they've seen the glory of the coming of death. And I've seen them release what was left in them. Seen their feces and urine soil their expensive denim. Seen 9mm suck the air out of their Nikes and the bark on their Timberland trees turn red. I've seen them lie dead. With one eye and one leg, I stand balanced on concrete corner slabs, watching the hookers get stabbed, dice games go bad, and moons go past. As moons continue to pass, my eye beams the color of taxi cabs from a city that never sleeps. I've seen these streets play for keeps and seldom lose. Seen men pour out booze for their dead friends who found out all too soon that these streets lead to a dead end. And this corner where I stand is just a chip off the old block, where felons get their third stripe searching for chips off the old block. Hands and knees get scraped searching for chips off old rock. I've seen souls rot, slowly decaying as they blow pot. I witness, watch, life, true crimes, non-fictitious in the eye of the beholder, but my eye never snitches. I've seen cases go cold, eyewitnesses who saw but never told. The dawning of a new day turned old night. Corner store robberies and fistfights. Beer brown boys get frisked right down to their tube socks. Cavity search for a few rocks, cracking under their tongues. I've seen them stash their stash and blast their guns, dash and run. Seen these streets raise baby mamas and bastard sons. A mixture of broken glass and dreams. I've seen thugs hustle under coffee black nights for cream. Seen sugar hills turn bitter mountains and youth fountains dry up. Bystanders die up in the mix. Addicts die in vain, but they labor in vain. But really it's Braxton Hicks. Men, women, and children trapped in the bricks, the product of projects. These streets have become the object of my eye. You see, they've dumbed down my emotions, but then again, it doesn't take logic to cry. And though I've seen their pain, I can't identify. So all I do is watch from this corner of the block, the same corner where the sign says stop, but the crime seems to never end. So I stand on one leg that never bends and watch with one eye that only shuts when the dawn awakens, looking down upon a concrete jungle that seems forsaken, standing on ground that has been bled, walked, and spat upon, but never shaken, only despised. And though I'm deaf to their cries, I'm not blind to the tears in their eyes. But all I can do is watch, night after night, hoping that one day it will all be all right. But until that day, I'll still be standing and watching, even when they're long gone, and their children's children remember to be inside before I come on.
I'm not saying that he don't need counseling, but I am saying all y'all who called him crazy didn't inspect his prayer closet, didn't take a magnifying glass to his soul to see that every day he was in the boxing ring with depression, and it moved like Ali, and he didn't know how to fight. And every time he looked down, his hands were cotton balls covered in oil. So even when he did try fighting back, he may as well have been a feather in 700 miles per hour winds. In depression, when it swung and connected, he would fall back like daylight savings, but more than an hour because the daylights were being knocked out of him. And the crazy part is, he wasn't even sad. He was just fed up. I'm not saying that he don't need therapy, but I am saying all y'all who thought he was wild and didn't parse through all of your past conversations, where his voice was a siren covered up by a pillow of fear. He wanted to tell you the whole story, but wasn't sure if you would love him if you saw all the chapters. You'd stop him midway through a page and be like, I'm not much of a reader. Maybe you should take this to someone who loves dark nonfiction works. See if they'll finish it. See if they'll use bookmarks in return to you and ask questions like, what on God's green earth did you mean when you said that part on page 5? Did you mean that you would overcome your sin, or your sin had overcome you? He has made a boogeyman out of your responses. So he hides under the covers of a forced smile, of a well-timed joke, of a good theological take. So whenever he feels this monster of contempt from others rising, he can just hide under more bedding. I'm not saying that he don't need Celebrate Recovery. But I am saying all y'all who think he should be in prison don't realize that he's already in one. His idols battled for his attention when he was young. Week after week, they vied for his affections after winning the golden ticket of brief delight in his youth. We're going to Hollywood. Week after week, he would judge them to see who was best, who would sing to his soul in a way that all the others wouldn't. And after a long season of experimentation, one came out on top, but it gained more power and fame and authority in his life than he initially thought. It sung melodies over him that were dissonant from the scriptures and all things holy, and he tried. He tried by himself not to sing along, but he didn't realize that he will always dance as long as there's not a better rhythm to pick up on. I'm not saying that he don't need accountability, but I am saying that all of y'all who thought his testimony of freedom was a bit insane weren't there when he felt like a car without brakes in front of his computer. Y'all weren't there when he felt like a runaway train with his phone in his hand, when he felt like there was nothing that he could do to avoid the people that he thought he loved, their bodies like poetry in motion, their movements carefully curated to confuse him on what it means to truly care for someone. His evenings, a reminder that he needs to depart from this life that he feels does him no good. His mornings, a reminder that he needs grace much more than he could ever fathom. His thoughts are fixated on what he would do if he met one of these actors in person. Would they shower him with affection? His brain was hopped up on the satisfaction that came from him gaining easy access. So he moonwalked perpetually. He keeps going back. He keeps going back. He keeps going back while the lies of the actors on the screen are in his head singing musical melodies until one day the music stops. The instruments die down. And he realizes that he built a box for his freedom and asked for Christ to come live in it. These actors on these screens, they don't know him. They can't love him. They don't love him. They profit off of him, and they love his bondage. And when he realized that, he snapped. And Jesus came in and gave him a new song, and the Spirit reminded him to listen. And God provided him with community to be the instruments. So for a moment, he gained a little bit of clarity. So I'm not saying someone shouldn't call the authorities, but I am saying you should understand why he strapped C4 to the back of his phone and went into the forest. You should totally get why there's smoke in your neighborhood because the trees are still on fire. Yes, call the therapist stat, but don't act like you don't understand why he pulled a Glock out in the middle of his kitchen and shot a perfectly working MacBook 7 times, then sat there crying tears of joy while it sat there looking like the worthless piece of metal that it is. You're too used to treating, plucking your eye out and chopping your hand off too nonchalantly. So I totally understand if you want to add him to the community watch list because he drug his TV into the middle of the street and took an axe to it until it was barely recognizable. But please, please tell me that you at least get it, right? You get what happens when you realize that you have freedom in Christ. And when you realize that your sin, it don't love you back.
It was a rainy Friday night at Mickey D's. 3 small fries, a snack wrap, a mocha, 5 McChickens, 2 with cheese. Heads bowed at a back corner table, we gave thanks for the food that we were about to receive. It was my wife, our 4 daughters, and me. And now it wasn't filet mignon at an extravagant restaurant venue, just some items that we got from the 99-cent menu. But that inexpensive food at that inexpensive place helped to make one of the most expensive moments of my life. And I'm learning that some of the better things in life are not always high priced, just highly unnoticed. And the moral to that moment was the fact that we were all together, happy, just to be able to break bread under those golden arches. And some of the most golden moments of my life have been those that seem less than 24 karat. Times when I realized that having less was actually more. Like when we weren't able to buy our daughters clothes from a store. But having the experience of someone letting us know that we were on their mind and that they had some things for our girls. Opening up a big black trash bag filled with pinks, purples, blues, and whites, pulling out shoes, shirts, jeans, and maybe even tights, much of which was brand name and in good condition. So though we had less of an ability to buy our daughters clothes, we had more of God's provision. And it's moments like that that I would have allowed to pass unappreciated. Because I mean, come on, who appreciates hand-me-downs anyway? But when the hand that hands me down my hand-me-downs is the same hand that made man in his image and in his likeness, anything that he hands me at that moment becomes priceless. So whether it's secondhand clothes or a secondhand car, we're learning to focus on where we're going while yet enjoying where we are. And by far, it is not the easiest thing to do. Coveting what other people have, wanted to do what they're doing too. But every time I entered my home and my daughters hugged my neck and legs, and when my wife kisses me in the morning and at night before I go to bed, and when I find myself doing things that I know that I shouldn't know and that God should pronounce me dead, but instead I awaken to the sky yawning and the sun rising from its rest, I'm reminded that I am blessed. And the rest, well, that's on its way. And a wise man once wrote that a living dog is better than a dead lion any day. So that's why on a rainy Friday night at Mickey D's with 3 small fries, a snack wrap, a mocha, 5 McChickens, 2 with cheese, I find my heart filled with glee, thankful for that golden moment.
Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. The last time I heard the lyrics to that song, tears found their avenue out of my eyeball and ran to the ground as if they belonged there. The weight of this world decompressed the pressure in my chest and collapsed me like a lawn chair, and I struggled to breathe. So I wrestled my emotion back into his hiding place like I was Jacob and it was God, except I was ready to let go of pain before pain was ready to let go of me. Pain didn't have permission to present himself in that moment, but he arrived anyway. I tried to hide the tears from my wife. I don't mind being vulnerable, but I didn't have the words to express that I just wasn't alright. How can I sing a song full of faith when it seemed like the dark past ain't brought us none? How can I sing a song full of hope when it seemed like the present ain't brought us none? Why does and the songwriter say that we gotta march on till victory is won, but it seemed like I got a sinking suspicion that marching ain't gonna get the job done, not on this side of heaven anyway. And why do we gotta march to get victory? Why do we gotta demonstrate in order to communicate that we got a long way to go if God is a God of justice? Why is it so hard to get his people to fight for it? Black people's stories keep getting met with statistics. Did you know more unarmed white people die at the hands of police than black folk? That's got to be a joke. It's more white people in America, and disproportionately more black people being shot reflects the fact that your system is broke. After all, ain't all of humanity sinfully depraved? Or is it just that black people ain't saved? I digress. I guess I'm just frustrated because it seemed like unity with God's people ain't really that hard, but I get the sense that I don't mess with it unless it's in my backyard. And Psalm 82 tells me that God is not okay with that. Salah.
There it is. That's such a nice graphic. Don't y'all agree? Okay, so some of y'all agree. You said what? It's all right, yeah. All right, so what this is I'm going to ask y'all for some words. Now, I'm only going to take one word at a time, and I'm going to try to convey this point that I want to get across. Now, I say only one word at a time. When I ask for a word out, maybe I'll point out like this, and someone just throw a word out. Here are the rules, though. If I don't know what the word means, I might ask you, or I might just say, I'm not going to do your word. And there will come a point where, I'll just end it. This will be a very short poem, y'all. This is just, I love to do this for fun with everyone, and I think that the ending is just really God glorifying. So, yeah, somebody, just any random word. Pineapple. So, hold on, real quick. Let me tell you why I can't take that one. No. Whoever said that has seen somebody else do this, and one of the words was pineapple. That's the one that so I have too much of, from what that girl did. So if y'all could give me a different one, sorry. Happy. Okay. Ever since the blood of Jesus changed me, I had a sneaking suspicion that depression felt like it had to leave. The sadness had gotten an eviction notice out of my heart. I didn't necessarily ask it to go, but there was someone else who was now taking a dwelling place in me. And every time I looked in the scriptures, I had a moment I had a moment where my past seemed like a memory that will no longer be so in glory. And Jesus asked me, in every circumstance, regardless of what you're going through, in every trial, toil, and snare, do you realize because you have me, you're happy? Give me a word. Corrupt? Okay, sorry, I got corrupt first. Oh yeah, I forgot to say a rule is I'm not gonna be rushed. I'm gonna think about it. You know what I mean? I'm not corrupt. All right, excellent. This flesh of mine was so corrupt. Next word. That really is all I'm gonna do for that one. Can y'all give me another word? Thank you, Dr.
Breathe.
Hold on, which one? Apologies, breathe.
Do both.
Okay, let's do both. All right. I grew up in a city where it was cool to do crime. Every time I walked down the street, I got somebody walking up to me asking me, what set you claim? Are you blood? Are you cuz? I remember that it used to plague my mind when my father would tell me, you don't be like them because they have forgotten what it means to have joy. They live life in survival mode. And the problem with that is, how can you ever breathe when that's the case? Every time you go to a store and somebody does not bang the set you claim, all you see is a shootout. Then the police gotta come and collect apologies. Let's take another.
I don't think they got it.
Yes, they got it. All right, I'll do a few more. Let's do
James Bond.
James Bond.
Yes.
James Bond. James Bond. Okay. All right. I had to tell a man the other day that his mother passed away. See, that's a normal occurrence for me. You see, I work at a jail. And oftentimes they cannot connect with their family in a physical way, so the family asks me, who is physical, to walk in and tell them. To tell them that they will no longer see breath in one of their loved ones. To tell them that there's nothing that they can do about it here behind these four walls. And do you want to know what the brother James asked for when I told him he would never be free? Bond. All right, y'all, it's 8:17, it's bedtime. I'll take one more.
Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar, pajamas and generous. Okay.
Let's go. Kendrick
Lamar, pajamas and generous. It's crazy how much entertainment industry sleeps on the Lord. How they wear their pajamas to every conversation about the almighty deity that we call the Lord. It's really crazy. I was listening to Kendrick Lamar talk about how he was a Hebrew Israelite on his album when just a few years earlier he said he was Christian. And I was like, so why are you dissing? And God has been so generous to you. And You are still breathing, so there's still time for you to give your life to the Lord. And all of that loyalty and royalty you claim that you have is not found here on earth. And if you saw who you are in Christ, you would really know your worth. And if you reverse, and is the that's a Kendrick Lamar song. All right, so all right, so for real, this is a final word, and I'm gonna do this part with this final word. So just give me one. One that's not those. Wisdom. Excellent. Excellent. I was 365 days ago, years old, when I realized how without wisdom I was. When I saw that I had been running from something that God called holy for so long that I forgot what walking felt like. I forgot that rest was something that was accessible to me. I forgot that all of these bruises that I had on my feet didn't come from obeying the Almighty, but rather from treating him like he could go in one ear and out of the other. But he created these ears. He created these eyes. And he told me if I don't listen to him, then I'm ultimately going to see my demise. You see, he knows the best way that we should live life. He wanted to see me flourish. He wanted to see me be great. He wanted to see me admit that I'm not as big as I think. So he surrounded me. He surrounded me like cops, and I just did a crime and I did not want to surrender. He surrounded me, and I had no choice. I had no choice but to realize my life was merely an empty wallet before I ran to him. That I was without hope. I was without joy. But do you guys see what his grace does? His grace not only saves you, but he saves others that can be around you too. Do you realize what a gift that is? Do you realize how lonely half of the world is claiming to be when they could just run to the body of Christ that Jesus has saved? Sadness has no home here. Missed phone calls have no home here sometimes. Missed texts have no home here. You can always be encouraged. You can always be spurred on to believe by other believers that he has saved. 365 days ago, I realized that Jesus has given me his saints as an extension of himself. My life used to be like an empty wallet. But because of the saints, can't y'all tell? I'm a rich man.